Shalom Aleichem and welcome to Machin Leira Online Smicha. With the weather being freezing cold, I'd like to discuss halacha as it's brought in Shulchan Aruch and Sifrei Achrayim, particularly connected to a freezing cold weather. We've done this once before about the dress code that persons should wear while he davens, if he's allowed to wear a coat, if he's allowed to wear a scarf and gloves. We spoke about gloves on Shabbos, if that's an issue. Today I want to speak in general about gloves. Where do we find the possible issue wearing gloves? Where are other mitzvahs or halachas where the concept of gloves comes up? Now, I made a note of approximately 10 different mitzvahs where I saw, and there's many more, just the tip of the iceberg, where I saw the Achrayim discuss about using gloves. The mitzvah of shiluach haken, when you're supposed to send away the mother bird, are you allowed to use gloves while you're sending away the mother bird? Kriyas HaTorah, while there is Kriyas HaTorah, the halacha says that you should hold the Torah as chazak, chisku v'imtzu, so you hold the Torah. Would it be disrespectful to hold it while you're wearing gloves? Writing a Sefer Torah is a disrespectful wearing gloves. Checking the simanim of the inside of a behema. When you make a bracha of a moitzi on bread, when you hold a birchas hamazon, a koishel bracha, as mentioned before, davening, lulav. I even saw an achrayim about chever kadisha. When they're doing the Torah, would it be disrespectful for using gloves? Writing a get. And then, of course, one of the sources where this comes up, plays a big role, is the mitzvah of Kisei Adam. Where the mitzvah of Kisei Adam, it says clearly that you should not do it in a disrespectful way. That's why you can't push the offer with your foot. You have to do it in an honorable way because it's a mitzvah. So let's talk about this specifically, about these mitzvahs that I saw that are discussed. And a very important source that becomes discussion is a Gemara Masechta Pesachim. The Gemara Masechta Pesachim, Daf Zayin Amud Aleph says, Taner Rabbanon, we learned a brayso. Arba tzvachos tzavcha ha'azara. There were 4 shouts that the azara shouted. Now the Mefarshim say that it's an expression, really. Not what does it mean? The azara shouts. It's a basko coming out, or some say it's a lashon malitza. Either way, there are 4 proclamations or announcements that azara makes. Number 1, Rishoina Tzu'u Mikon B'nei Eli. Please, the sons of Eli should leave the Azara, Shetimu Heichal Hashem, because they made the Heichal Hashem Tameh. Okay, that's not relevant to what we're talking about. The second one is what the second announcement that the Azara makes is directly connected to our halacha. Va'oid Savcha, another announcement that the Azara screams, Tzei mikan Yisachar ish kfar Barkai. Yisachar from the place Barkai should leave the Azara, shemechabed es atzmai, because he shows honor and respect for himself, but mechalo shem kachim shemayim. But when it comes to kachim things, the Beis Hamikdash matters, holy matters, he desecrates it. What crime did he do? So the Gemara goes on to say, he would wrap his hands with a silk cloth, not only with the hands wrapped with a silk cloth, covered nicely, and a nice cloth, he would do the avodah. He didn't want to get dirty from the blood and the meat of the karbanis, so that was a terrible thing that he did. Why was it so terrible? So Rashi actually brings 2 pirushim. Not one pirush is because it is a chatzitza. Why is it a chatzitza? The Torah says in Vayikra Dalet Chav Hey, the Torah says, the kohen has to take the blood of the chatas, and the Gemara learns from there that he actually has to take it with his hands. He can't use. He can't use. He can't use some other form. It shouldn't be a chatzitza between his hands and the keli that's holding the blood. So by him having something wrapped around, it's a chatzitza. That's one pirush. Another pirush is shebizoyin hu lekachim. It's disrespectful for the karbonos that you don't want to touch the carbon, you don't want to touch the meat, you don't want to touch the blood. Obviously, blood is going to cause bloodiness. It's going to be red and schmutzig, and the meat is also. But what are you? You're better than the carbon. So it's disrespectful when you're about to do a mitzvah. You're involving yourself with a mitzvah. It's disrespectful to wear something around your hand. Whoa, that causes big discussion. So it looks like anything that is a mitzvah, it would, according to this Pshat and Rashi, is disrespectful to wear gloves or wear something wrapped around your hand. So in Pischei Tshuva, in Yoreh Deah Siman Reish Ayin Aleph, brings from the Birkei Yosef that if a person is writing a Sefer Torah, I'm not so sure if you're allowed to wear gloves while it's cold. You want to wear gloves while you're writing it. I don't know if you're allowed to, because what's the debate? The debate is there's a difference between possibly a cheftza de kedusha, when the item itself is kaddish, like the karbonis, or the item that you're touching is not yet kaddish. So he clearly says based on that Gemara, I'm not so sure it's allowed to write a Sefer Torah while you are wearing gloves. Now, I mentioned before that this is by a Sefer Torah where obviously there is some kedusha. In Chashukei Chemed from Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein, he asks the question in Maseches Gittin Daf Chaf Amud Aleph. It's very cold and somebody is a sofer to write Gittin. Is he allowed to wear gloves while he writes a get? What's the question over there? The question over there is, I'm not so sure that the get, I know that by the Sefer Torah, the Pischei Tshuva was not so happy. But over here, I don't know if writing a get is a mitzvah. So he brings from a Gemara. The Gemara says that if a person is, while he's writing the get, if an ani walks by, not everybody agrees that he has to give him tzedakah because he's a Eisik b'mitzvah. Writing a get under certain circumstances is a mitzvah, and he has other reasons to prove it. So if by Sefer Torah it's not proper to write a Sefer Torah with gloves on, most probably not proper to write a get while gloves on. Reb Chaim Kanievsky, however, said that it could be, even though they both might be a mitzvah by a Sefer Torah, there is definitely a concept that while you're writing it, as you're writing it, the nicer and better you write it is a better Sefer Torah. The mitzvah of Zek Heli Vanveu applies by a Sefer Torah. Where we don't see that Zek Heli Vanveu should apply by writing a nicer get, doesn't apply. So therefore, even if get would be considered a mitzvah, not necessarily having gloves while you're wearing it is an issue. So where else does this come up? So I mentioned before, Shiluach HaKen. Shiluach HaKen, so over here the discussion is, the Chassam Sofer and the Orach Chaim Siman Kuf discusses, and the Aruch HaShulchan in Yoreh Deah Siman Reish Tzadik Beis Vav, and many places can discuss this. It all basically boils down if Shiluach HaKan is a mitzvah that you must do with holding the motherboard. Maybe it's enough by knocking on where it is sitting, and that will cause it to be afraid and go away by itself, or shouting out to it for it to run away. So if there's other ways where you can fulfill the mitzvah, then what's wearing a glove any worse than knocking on the place where it is or screaming at it for it to go away? So that will basically be the discussion by Shiluach HaKan. If it's not a mitzvah that has to be done touching it, holding it, then for sure it should be allowed while you're holding the gloves. But even if you take what the Shulchan Aruch says, tzarich l'shalom ha'eim ad sheteitze mitachas yodoi. So the question is, if you don't want to hold the bird because the bird might be a little dirty or there might be bugs on it, would it be disrespectful to wear your gloves while you're sending away the mother bird? So based on this Gemara, it might be a question, because the Gemara says that by the Karbonis, we find in Shailos Teshuvas Torah Lishma, Siman Chavav, he says, are you allowed to wear gloves in the winter while you're holding the Sefer Torah? And he actually is very much machmir, and he says it's a little disrespectful, because since you're holding a Chefza Shekdusha, you're holding a Torah, it would be disrespectful to say, it's pasminish, I don't want to hold it with my own hand. Now, where else does this come up? The Alter Rebbe, in two places in the food items, discusses this. Actually, in one place he says it clearly, in one place maybe we could fit it in. The Alter Rebbe in Siman Kuf Pei Gimel, when he talks about benching a Kaishel Bracha, he says how you should hold the Kaishel Bracha, exactly where in the hand it should be. It should be in the right hand, how it should be held. In Siman Kuf Pei Gimel, Siv Zayin, the Alter Rebbe says clearly, Ve'ein litel hakois bebate yadayim. Don't hold the Kaishel Bracha with gloves on. Rak yisirim koidem. Make sure to take the gloves off first. Kaishel Bracha, it's pretty clear. You should not wear gloves. Others have a raya from what it says in B'tzia Sapas. Now, the Alter Rebbe doesn't clearly speak about gloves in B'tzia Sapas, but the Mishnah Berurah does. And that's the Alter Rebbe in Siman Kuf Samach Zayin, Siv Zayin, says that when you're making the bracha on the bread, you should hold the bread on the right hand, like everything else that you make a bracha on. The toiv sheyitin olav shtei yodav, and it's best if you put both your hands on the bread, because when you have both of the hands, you have 10 fingers. It's corresponding to 10 mitzvahs that could come by making bread. And the Alter Rebbe in Siv Zayin go through what the 10 mitzvahs are. So therefore, you should put the 10 fingers on the bread. Now, the Kafar Chaim says in Siman Kuf Samach Zayin Sifkat Lamed Beis, he brings from the Siddur Kavanos Rashash that the reason you hold the 10 fingers is to be mamshich the Eses Svirus. So maybe if it's the mamshich the Eses Svirus, you want the hands open, not covered in a glove. Maybe you could say, even according to the Alter Rebbe, even though when you have gloves you see 10 slots, but you don't see 10 fingers. Maybe it's a significance to see 10 fingers. Mentioned before that in Lulav there's a discussion if you're over there, because again, some want to say that holding it through gloves in your hand, it's a chatzitza. Anything that you have to hold straight, it would be considered a chatzitza. Now, I did see that in Mishnah Berurah, Siman Tzadik Aleph, Sivkat and Yud Beis, he says a very funny remez. He says, for those who wear gloves when they daven, like you're traveling, you have no time to daven, Koira and the Aleim, I refer to them, I call them the pasuk, Al Tivieni Regel Gaiva, don't bring me to chutzpah, gaiva, audacity. The Yad Rishoim Al Tinadeni. So he says, Yad Rishoim Al Tinadeni. What's a Yad Rishoim? Those who don't want to have their hands clean, available to do a mitzvah, they cover it over. They're all worried about the things. Sometimes, if that's what means more to you than the actual mitzvah, than the honor for the mitzvah, I think that's what David HaMelech is saying. Yad Rishoim Al Tinadeni. But I must conclude that Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein, however, says, based on all this, when it comes to Shiluach HaKan, if a person doesn't want to hold the chicken, I was thinking also by Kaparis, a person doesn't want to hold the baby bird or the chicken because it's dirty or he's a istinus or whatever it is, definitely it's not considered a bizayin, and you may hold it with gloves on.